Smart24, driving business.
Hello there, a very good morning, and thank you so much for joining us today. My name is Anthony, and this is Financial Markets, and of course this is Smart24 TV. We do drive your business. Now the show probably is, if you're a new viewer here, thank you for joining us, and the show is brought to you by Altex East Africa. With Altex East Africa, you can buy treasury bonds in Uganda, Kenya and Tanzania with the most friendly terms and conditions, but as well with convenience. Altex East Africa is regulated by the Capital Markets Authority of Uganda, and with Altex we are saying you can access the market using your mobile money. Now simply go to your phone and dial *292# to get to register, learn more about the products and start your journey of investment with Altex East Africa. Altex East Africa says that you can start with as low as 15,000 Ugandan shillings for your trades at the different bonds that are listed in Uganda, in Kenya and Tanzania. And that's exactly why we are saying at Altex East Africa you can do something new. Let's get to dive into the business of the Uganda Stock Exchange first and foremost. Now, moving up to speed, yesterday's trading was, of course, characterized by an increase in the market participants and the number of deals. However, the number of volumes or the shares that were actually traded significantly dropped, comparing those numbers with the figures on the day before. Now, 26th of April saw at least over about 24.5 million Ugandan shillings market value in a volume of about 688,000 shares in total that were actually traded on the Uganda Securities Exchange. The data showed a 46% decline in the volume and at least over 82% decline in the turnover, or the amount of money that was actually transacted on the Uganda Securities Exchange. The Uganda Securities Exchange currently has 18 listings and a total market capitalization of at least 19.9 trillion Ugandan shillings. At the moment, in aggregate, at least 3 equities participated in trading, and that was none other than MTN Uganda, Stanbic Bank Uganda and Wumeme on the Uganda Securities Exchange. The day ended with 3 gainers and 5 bottom losers at the table on the Uganda Securities Exchange after the trading day on Wednesday. Nation Media Group led the gainers with a total gain of at least over about 6.27% up to a closing price of 441.44 Ugandan shillings, marking one of the biggest gains this week after a continued gaining since the beginning of the week on Monday. East African Breweries Limited also gained a 4.07% on their price, closing at 4,545 Ugandan shillings per share. Equity Bank Limited appreciated at least over 0.30% as well on the Uganda Securities Exchange, closing at 1,249.83 Ugandan shillings per share. On the losing side, unfortunately, we had several stocks coming in as bottom losers, in which Jubilee Holdings Limited stock came in as the worst performer for the day after having dropped at least 3.60% of its value on the exchange, closing at a price of 5,035.18 Ugandan shillings. Consequent also of very slow trading on Wednesday, Stanbic Bank Uganda dropped off 1.03% to slightly drop to 25 Ugandan shillings per share. Now, yesterday, but one, Stanbic Bank Uganda was one of the most outstanding stocks this week after a gain that saw at least the company add over between 3 and 5 shillings in a day. Now, on this particular day, that was on the 24th of April, over about 1.46 million shares were traded, and the stock appreciated to 25.26 shillings from 23 shillings per share. Yesterday, well, the trading ended with Stanbic Bank losing a little bit or slightly from that value to 25.0 Ugandan shillings per share. Now, Stanbic Bank Uganda's market capitalization is up to still a tune of about 1.28 trillion Ugandan shillings, making the stock the 5th most valuable via market capitalization on the Uganda Securities Exchange. At the moment, also, Stanbic Bank Uganda enjoys the #1 spot in terms of the most traded on stocks. And currently, in the last one quarter, we're looking at a total volume of at least 128 million shares that has been traded over this particular period. And when you look at the total value or the turnover for this particular period, we have about 2.92 billion Ugandan shillings on Stanbic Bank Uganda alone. Now, this means that Stanbic Bank Uganda continues to be the favorite, one of the favorites, and one of the most valuable companies on the exchange, and the most traded on stock, like I said, in the past 3 months. Stanbic Bank Uganda's performance has been, of course, pushed forward mainly by some of the results that the company has been able to put up in the last 3 years amidst the very, very many challenges, especially the COVID-19 pandemic and the inflation that hit the country last year. Now, Stanbic Bank Uganda has had its profit after tax actually getting to increase over the years. With 2021, when you look at 2020, 2021, and 2022, the company has been progressing in a very positive direction in terms of profit. In 2020, the company made a profit of 243 billion. In 2021, it rose to a tune of 275 billion. And then last year, after, of course, they released their financial results, it showed that they made a profit after tax of 366 billion, which is an indication of growth and a sign that the company is resilient and continues to be one of the most trusted financial institutions in the country. Also, Stanbic Bank Uganda is currently the biggest bank by assets in Uganda. That is, of course, amongst the local banks here in Uganda. The story goes on and on, but currently, when you look at the performance of the stock on the Uganda Securities Exchange in the short term, 1 week performance has indicated an 8.7% growth. And in 4 weeks, we are seeing a growth of 19.1% in their stock price. And in 3 months, likewise, 19.1%. Year to date, 19.1%. Basically, on the backdrop of the fact that the company began this year with a price of 21 Ugandan shillings, making it one of the biggest gainers in year to date performance on the exchange, particularly taking the 2nd spot in terms of the biggest year to date performance on the Uganda Securities Exchange. Moving on, the other loser on the market was MTN Uganda, rather in an odd and very unfortunate trading day. MTN Uganda lost 0.14 Ugandan shillings, and that was down to a 167.86 Ugandan shillings stock price. MTN Uganda currently is hitting its rock bottom, of course, putting in mind last year's very, very least price they had, which was 160, and this was just on a single day, and the stock rose from there and did not actually return. And on average, last year the stock price was between 175 and 180 Ugandan shillings. Now, currently, MTN Uganda's stock is almost falling from the sky after the company has now so far lost at least 0.08% in just 1 week and over 1.31% in 4 weeks. And 3 months has seen at least 6.74% of the pricing of MTN Uganda. Now, the stock currently, however, is the fourth most traded on stock on the Uganda Securities Exchange in the past 3 months. In this period, we are looking at a volume of at least 9.45 million shares traded at 1.62 billion Ugandan shillings market turnover. Now, MTN Uganda, when you look at the current performance, yes, we have not seen fully the audited financial results, but according to the partial results, and this was revealed in one of the meetings with the stakeholders at MTN Uganda, that they made a 20% increase in profit before tax. That was roughly what we could get. However, that is not helping currently, as the stock is still, of course, being bombarded by various uncertain storms that are currently rocking the company's stock on the Uganda Securities Exchange. MTN Uganda is the youngest listing so far on the exchange, coming in just about 1.5 years ago in 2021, after a very successful initial public offer, which was, however, undersubscribed to. And the company came in as the first electronic initial public offer after, of course, getting to help the shareholders access the market through USSD codes and various other platforms that made investing in the company easier. Last year, the dividend issued by MTN Uganda was 4.7 Ugandan shillings per share. Comparing that with this year's trading results, we hope definitely there will be an increase in that dividend this year. However, trading is quite still slow, but definitely this could be also a good opportunity for new investors into the company to get in, as the company is still at its lowest pricing. Moving on, other stocks that did lose were Kenya Airways, which lost at least over 0.04% in price, closing at a price of 105.67 Kenyan shillings. Well, Kenya's Airways' problems are still quite a myriad, and when you look at the company's performance last year, well, made the worst loss ever since the company began, and definitely something that worried the investors at Kenya Airways. The company is still very much indebted, both locally and internationally, and government has been trying to come up to, of course, redeem Kenya Airways on a number of occasions, and that has not yet come through as a success. But we definitely hope for the very best this year, as Kenya Airways promises recovery, promises that, of course, COVID-19 is away now and the space is open. However, this is also a time when many airlines are cropping up, especially in the regional business, looking at Jumbo Jet and a couple of other regional airlines coming up. Definitely the pressure is on for Kenya Airways this year as well. The Centum investment stock as well lost at least 0.03%, down to a price of 241.14 Ugandan shillings, as per data from the exchange yesterday. Centum Investments is one of the cross listings that were very active last year, most active actually amongst the cross listings. However, there was various gaps. When you look at last year's trading and this year's trading, Centum has had no trading this year at all, and which is quite worrying, because it was at least one of the flag bearers when it comes to the cross listings participating in the markets trading here in Uganda on the Uganda Stock Exchange, which is their secondary stock exchange. However, definitely there has been hope for improvement, that Centum will probably get to do better this year on the exchange. On Nairobi Securities Exchange, where it is primarily listed, the stock is doing quite well and quite promising for the shareholders there. However, more definitely needs to be done when it comes to the trading on the Uganda Securities Exchange for Centum Investments. In summary, the Uganda Securities Exchange All Share Index moved up to by about 7.8 points to a tune of 1,119.81 points. Of course, very much due to the stocks that gained on the day, including NMG, East African Breweries, and Equity Bank Limited, that outweighed the losers, much as the losers were more in number. Now, the local company index is currently counting a 1-week gain of 0.01%, which is quite good news for us this week. It shows that markets generally this week have done well in the space of the last 7 days. Most of the stocks have been able to get to lift up their game. And these stocks especially include Stanbic Bank Uganda, MTN, though now dwindling away, and a couple of other cross listings as well contributing to this particular gain. In 4 weeks now, it's a gain of over 1.25%, which is even much better and greater news. On the other hand, the local company index did not perform so well, of course, attributed to the losses of MTN and Stanbic Bank Uganda. The local company index decreased by 0.23% on Wednesday, down to 273.16 points. We need more activity, more efficiency, more trading to get the market up to speed. Remember, this is an earnings season. This is where most of the companies are revealing their financial results for the financial year 2022, and definitely we would expect this to be a peak season when it comes to trading. Talking about financial results, yesterday still something really great happened on the exchange. The Bank of Baroda Uganda stock was able to actually get to release or publish their fiscal results or financial results for the year ended 2023. And I just want to take you through a very, very quick look at some of the highlights of the reports here from Bank of Baroda Uganda. Now, overall, 2022, the report says it was a good year with a very high performance and growth, as the bank witnessed growth in most of all the major financial parameters. According to the reports, the bank constantly worked on its strength and objectivity, resulting in about 35.41% growth in its profitability. The profit after tax of the bank grew from 90.23 billion in the year 2021 to a tune of 122.19 billion Ugandan shillings. When you look at Bank of Baroda Uganda, their stock is quite stable, especially when it comes to pricing. But of course, it's active, and you see trading happening, but the pricing is not as volatile as other stocks like MTN, for example. So I think it's one of those insensitive stocks, if I could call it so, because pricing definitely is affected by mainly the reputation of the company. Remember, investors buy depending on how they feel they should be buying the stock, and investors sell based on how they feel they should actually keep into the company or actually move out. When they feel like moving out, definitely the stock prices are going to come rattling downwards, because that is going to mean they're going to be doing panic selling, and that means they're going to be willing to give away their stock at even lower prices. But we have seen really Bank of Baroda stock being very, very resilient when it comes to stock price stability on the Uganda Securities Exchange. Now, the report further says that the credit portfolio of Bank of Baroda also crossed the desired 1 trillion. Yes, very, very, very powerful achievement there. The portfolio, the debt portfolio, the credit portfolio did exceed the 1 trillion Ugandan shillings during the year, with terminal figures of at least 1.089 trillion. The total interests earned by the bank during the year, by the way, about that 1 trillion, now it's a new requirement by Bank of Uganda that the credit portfolio of any financial institution to the level of the commercial bank, that is, I think, tier 2 of the financial ladder, should not go below 1 trillion. Now, Bank of Baroda was standing behind that last year, and they did issue more shares to get their shareholders to buy more shares and raise their credit portfolio, which now has risen actually to a tune of 1.089 trillion. This is what the fiscal report further details here. Now, the report also further says that total assets, total interest earned by the bank during 2022 also grew by 23.04% as compared to 2021. And the bank was also instrumental in reducing its operational expenses from 41.99 billion in 2021 to 37.01 billion in 2022. Now, getting to look at some of the other figures and indicators of performance. During the year, the bank also said it was bestowed with various accolades by different independent agencies, and one of them was the first prize winner as the most compliant bank, and that is that category under the Uganda Revenue Authority for the fiscal year 2021-2022. The bank was also adjudged with the best consistent and competent bank under People's Quality Choice Awards for the third consecutive time. And these awards are testimony to the trust and belief that Ugandans have in Bank of Baroda. Now, getting to move on to what you would term as one of the most looked out for things in any financial statement for the shareholders, the dividend. Let's have a look at what their dividend proposals are like this year. Now, according to the report, the Board of Directors of Bank of Baroda resolved and recommended a dividend of 25 billion Ugandan shillings. They resolved and recommended. Remember, this is subject to approval, especially by the shareholders, but also by Bank of Uganda. Now, this is for the fiscal year ended 2022 rather. And when you get to divide this up amongst the shares, you're looking at least 10 shares per 10 Ugandan shillings per share for that dividend proposed. The proposal for paying this is, of course, subject to approval by Bank of Uganda and shareholders in the annual general meeting, which will be communicated at a further date as per the report. Now, that means that definitely Bank of Baroda is increasing its dividend last year. If you are with us here, remember we had about 1.5 billion roughly that was issued by the bank as dividend. This year we are looking at, actually it was about 1.5 billion. Now we're looking at a tune of 25 billion. That's a very huge growth there in the number of in the amount of dividend that is going to be given out if approved by the shareholders. Let's see how this report will impact the stock's performance on the Uganda Securities Exchange. Usually when you have dividend increment, yes, people get more excited and they want to buy into the stock, but we haven't seen that today yet. Yesterday we didn't see that, and even let's see how today ends. Definitely it will communicate a lot about the future of the stock on the Uganda Securities Exchange. Let's move ahead to Nairobi and have a look at some of the biggest trade here in Nairobi Securities Exchange. Now, on Wednesday, the day ended with 45 listings participating in trade on the Nairobi Securities Exchange. The day ended with 19 gainers and over 18 losers in a day that saw 58% decline in volume and 52% decline in the turnover. Now, the faces on the gainers list were not that new, and getting to check out some of the faces here, we have Kakuzi leading the gainers with a 9.95% gain, and that was to an appreciation of about 351 Ugandan shillings per share. Definitely Kakuzi is one of those gainers that have tried to maintain a very wonderful performance, and currently they're looking at when you look at their year-to-date performance, yes, it's still in the red with a loss of 8.83%, but there's improvement in the short run. Look at the last 4 weeks. In the last 4 weeks, Kakuzi has gained 46.3%, and that's just speaking of in the last 4 weeks. That's 1 month, roughly speaking. Definitely something you cannot underlook or actually undermine from Kakuzi there. Kakuzi was not alone on the gainers list. We had Ever Ready East Africa as well, appreciate at least 6.06%, Centum Investments 3.21%, and Stanbic Holdings a gain of 2.65%. On the losing side, Liberty Kenya Holdings came out last with an end-of-day price depreciation of 7.12%. The benchmark index, that is the NSE All Share Index, moved up 0.8 points, up to at least 108.49 points. That's the trading, my friend, from the Nairobi Stock Exchange. Remember, to diversify your portfolio is always to your own benefit, and so always try to look out for new stuff, new stocks, and invest as in a diversified manner as much as possible, so that we get better stocks and less risk as well along the way. Now, getting to move across to the United States. Finally, the United States stock pointed up Wednesday, led by the NASDAQ. Now, the NASDAQ is the technology index where you have most of the tech stocks. Talk about Tesla, talk about Amazon and Microsoft and the like. Now, as investors, of course, had to start to digest the big tech earnings bonanza that kicked off this week. This week, of course, big techs have been putting up their earnings for the last one quarter. The day ended with the S&P 500 and the Dow Jones Industrial Average up by about 0.2% at the opening of the bell, whereas the technology-heavy Nasdaq Composite climbed by a record 0.91%. Government bonds were mixed. The yield on the 10-year Treasury note slid to 3.39%, while the rate-sensitive 2-year note actually declined 3.88% on Wednesday morning. Now, why the Nasdaq Composite? The big tech stocks like Microsoft and Alphabet both reported better than expected earnings and revenue for most recent quarter after closing on Tuesday. Just let's have a look at Microsoft. Microsoft rallied more than 7% on Wednesday alone. That is in the morning hours after the software giant reported fiscal third quarter earnings that surpassed the estimates of most of the economists on the US market, indicating a growing strength in its AI business and the cloud business as well. Looking at the earnings of Microsoft earned close to 2.45 billion US dollars, and this is at least a growth of 52.9 billion US dollars in revenue and a 2.45 US dollar increment in every single share, compared to a profit of about 2.22 US dollars per share on a 29.4 billion revenue in the same period just a year ago. That's definitely a very interesting report from the technology stocks there on the Wall Street. And of course, we will keep you posted for more as we witness more unveiling for the big tech stocks earnings for the first quarter of 2023. That's it, my friend. Thank you so much for joining us this morning. Definitely check us out on Twitter by following. That's at Smart24 TV, and following me personally at Anthony Sebale. You can also get to visit our website at www.smart24.tv/news and get the latest on business. Remember, the show is proudly brought to you by Altex East Africa. You can trade with Altex by simply dialing *292# and getting your money to work for you. And the Zabu is an initiative that is increasing accessibility and convenience in the treasury bond market. Get to invest with as little as 15,000 Ugandan shillings with Altex East Africa. Altex East Africa, doing something new. And that's it, my friend. Thank you so much. See you tomorrow. Tomorrow is the weekend. Of course, we get to wind up the week and we get to analyze and break down the major events of the week. So endeavor to catch the show and get us live on air. See you tomorrow. Have a very wonderful day.